Hi there, and welcome to this episode of Nocturnal Transmission with your host, yours truly, Ryan Kerr. I was so thrilled to chat with Ren Navarro of Beer Diversity and talk about the need for diversity in beer, wine, and spirits. Hence the title, The Spirits of Diversity. I am so clever. Ren and I chat about how 2020 was a blockbuster year for consumption of alcohol, but also for diversity, civil rights, all kinds of explosive changes in the industry and how the industry is adapting. It's a really interesting chat, and I just found out that Ren has started her own podcast called Ren Likes to Talk, and the link is going to be in the description box. And let me know what you think. Have a great day. Bye. Hi, Renee.
Hi, my friends.
You're the second Renee on Nocturnal Transmission, actually.
Weird.
The first Renee was she lives in Stratford, and you live in Kitchener.
Yes.
Okay, because sometimes I mix up Kitchener and Waterloo because they're
the same. Who cares?
people get really offended. It's like
Listen, but I'm from Toronto, so I automatically don't care.
I mean, I was hoping that you would say something like that, but I don't know. Maybe you've converted.
No, I still don't care.
You don't go to the Church of Kitchener Waterloo.
I don't even know where it is.
Okay, perfect. I love that. There's the cool thing about this podcast, right? Is I'm interviewing people digitally. They can be anywhere in the world, and yet I still end up talking about Toronto every episode all the time. And I'm just yeah, I'm not biased or anything, and my guests are from all over, but also I really love where I live, and this is a great place, even though during the pandemic we've got a lot less going on everywhere. Thank you for being on the show. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate you very much. I have known you since 2007.
Really?
Yeah. So we met at the Inside Out Film Festival in Toronto. I had my first film in the Inside Out Film Festival. The first thing I ever made, actually, because I did it in art school. And you were a photographer. And as soon as I saw that camera lens, I was like, and this is how I know that I would be a really questionable TV personality, because I made love to that lens. You'd say things like act natural, and I'd be like, is this natural? How about now? How about now? Or I would grab somebody and I'd be like, can you take a picture of us talking? And you'd be like, sure. And then we both stare. Anyway.
Yeah.
But now you work as a diversity coach for the brewery industry. What is your official title?
So I haven't really given myself a title. I'm usually just head troublemaker.
Yes.
And it's the company is kind of like an advocacy consulting company that works with alcohol. I branched out from just beer. So it's beer, wine, and spirits.
Sweet. And and what is your company called?
It's called Beer Diversity, which if I could go back in time and come up with a better name, I would. Because at the time, I was working in the beer industry. So I was like, beer needs diversity. Boom, there we are. And it's a great name and everything, but people are just like, oh, you just work with beer. And I'm like, no, I work with more.
Well, I mean, you could, and this is, of course, you'll have to pay me for this idea afterward, but, you could do one of those hipster things where you just call it Be Diverse. And then you could be like, the B used to stand for beer, but now it just stands for how we could all be better.
Oh, yeah. Where were you 3 years ago?
I was probably sitting at home wearing a slightly too small for me button up in front of my brick wall. Yeah, I don't know. Wasn't close enough to you.
I should have talked to you when I was doing this.
Well, that's we can fix that. You should call me more. I've certainly reached out to you at some very interesting moments. So you were working in the beer and spirits and alcohol industry, and you noticed that there was more of a need for diversity. What do you mean by that exactly?
And I didn't notice. People pointed it out to me. I mean, you know me, I'm kind of thick at times. And And it really was like, I was a sales rep for beer companies, like, for years. And someone was like, how does it feel to be the only Black woman selling craft beer around Ontario? And I was like, what? Like, literally just like didn't even really pay attention because, I mean, you fall into these routines and you don't think like, oh, I see like this kind of person and this kind of person. Like, you're just like, I gotta sell shit and I gotta get it out there and I have to like hit targets and quotas and whatever. And is this person nice and will they buy my stuff? Cool. And that's like all I thought about. And once I had to start thinking about it a bit more, it started being a thing. But I mean, I started the company by accident. There was definitely no great origin story, and there was no like, yeah, I'm gonna do this and like powder the people. Like it was like, oh, maybe I should do a thing.
And you also like, I mean, there's two major things that I notice about you, and I'm not a super beer drinker, so let's just be honest about that. I'm really trying. I'm really trying. I over the summer, I have a couple of friends of mine who love beer, and they invited me to their place for beer and cheese tastings.
Nice.
And they were on Zoom, and they were hosted by different breweries and whatever. And I noticed that not only was there no people of color, they were all men. So in your case, you're like maybe the only woman salesperson and the only Black woman and the only person who's Black. Like that's a lot of boxes.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of women selling beer now.
Oh, is there?
Thankfully, yeah.
Oh, good.
But it's still, I mean, it's like disproportionate numbers. But yeah, I mean, I know two Black friends who work in a tap room, and it's that joke like you travel somewhere and they're like, oh, you're from Toronto. Do you know that guy named Tim? And it's like, oh, do you know these two Black people? And I'm like, actually, yeah, I do. But yeah, there are no to this day, there's no Black female or woman identifying sales reps in craft beer. That part hasn't changed over the years. But yeah, I have two Black friends who work in tap rooms.
And do you think that's because there's the kind of promoted culture of, I'm focusing on beer, but beer drinkers are like white men watching a sports game? I mean, I saw you on the cover of Now magazine, which is a big deal in Toronto, with a T-shirt that said "Black people love beer." Was that a controversial statement at the time?
I think it made a lot of people really uncomfortable. There were a lot of like, "Where's my white guys love beer" shirt, and I was like, "It's the world. Look around you." Yeah, people got really weird about it. It wasn't. I don't know if it was controversial as much. It was like very uncomfortable. Huh. And I like. I mean, you can say it's controversial, but then like I was really like that discomfort piece where people were just like, "Oh, I need to like crack a joke." Like I had friendships end over that T-shirt.
Really?
Because people just got really weird and like kind of racist about it, and like, "Oh, I'm just kidding," and it was just like, you understand now that there is this status quo and that there is this obvious promotion of certain beverages to certain people. And like beer, when you think of beer, like you said, it's usually white straight guys. If I think of white wine, it's blonde white women. If I think of whiskey, it's like rough and tumble dudes who like build their own houses with their bare hands and like two nails. Like, do you know what I mean? So there's always this like stereotype behind these things. And yeah, that T-shirt, just people were like, well, why would you have to wear that on a shirt? And it's like, because I'm not reflected anywhere.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I would just also add that I think whiskey drinkers can also be men that wear satin paisley robes and smoke pipes.
Yes. And they have a fireplace that burns all day long.
Constant
no one ever tends to it.
Nobody.
But it just always burns.
It's always there. That's amazing to me that you lost friendships over that T-shirt. I would have thought you would have lost friendships because people were imitating you, like, and standing next to the photo, which I did, and just did a bad job.
Oh my God, that was that. So my friend Ben, who is a beer writer and also is just like has a grown-up job, started that whole thing and called it Renning. And it was the funniest thing ever. Like I did not expect it to take off. Like I think it was trending for a while, which is so weird.
So good. So you were selling beer in the craft beer land, and are most brewers white men as well?
Yeah, I mean, there's a small percentage of breweries owned or co-owned by women, but Canada has like over 1,000 breweries. I think it's probably close to 2,000 now, and Ontario has probably 500
Wow.
breweries. So it's when I say small percentage, like even if we said 15% because we were being really generous, like it's a tiny amount of women owned breweries.
Right.
So yeah, it's still predominantly male, and the same with brewers. Like there are women brewing, but it's a small percentage given the numbers.
Right. And would you say, like, branching out to winery and spirits, it's sort of the same, it's reflected the same. So it's
Yeah, yeah. Like I don't know of, and hopefully like one of your viewers will be like, actually, but I don't know of any wineries that are owned by Black people or by people of color. So it's and I do know that there are more LGBTQ plus folks working in wine. I don't know about spirits. I think spirits is still predominantly white from the work I've done. But again, that's like at that point, it's just me being like, this is all I've seen.
right. And so you have this business, Beer Diversity, and somebody calls you and says, "Can you make my job more diverse?" Or do they say, "Can you make my social media look like my workplace is more diverse?" Or what do they ask, and what can you do?
It's Yeah, I think like I do a lot of sessions. And so it's really to talk about it and get people used to the idea of talking about not just diversity, but inclusion.
Hmm.
And because you can be diverse but not inclusive, right? Like you can be the one Black person and you're like, I'm excluded from everything that this company does.
Right.
So kind of talking about that, and not using the words targeted when it comes to marketing to BIPOC folk. And why are you targeting? Do you want to include them? Then let's talk about it that way. So just giving people a safe space to ask questions, and you know like work through stuff, and understand that it's not just a flash in the pan kind of thing. And if it is, then maybe this isn't for you.
Right.
And you're going to, your business is possibly going to suffer because of it.
Right. I have a friend of mine who's Indigenous told me a long time ago that if we want to work together or we want to be friends, then we have to build a friendship. It's a
Yeah.
relationship. It's ongoing, uh, which is kind of second nature for me because I'm definitely a Pinot Grigio drinking chatty Cathy. And in the summer, my hair really lightens to a gorgeous blonde. I don't know if you can see the shimmer right now. Uh, but it doesn't seem like rocket science to me that if you are invested because you want to care, then you have to care.
Yeah.
But it seems like a lot of, especially in the business world, a lot of people aren't, they actually don't care.
I mean, but part of it too is this fear of alienating some form of clientele that is already there. And it's like, yeah, but if your clientele is racist, do you want them to stay? Do you want, like, does it matter if they're upset because you've highlighted some Black folks, or we're doing work with like the indigenous peoples of your area? Like, it's so funny to hear people being like, well, we don't want to offend our customer base. And it's like, so you're cool with people who are like drinking your product, or like consuming your wares, or wearing your stuff, like, and well, I'm not racist, but
But
like there's a lot of that. And it's just like, I get that you have to make money, but like you don't need hate dollars.
right, that must be a difficult message to send.
Yeah, I mean, because capitalism.
Because capitalism, yeah. It's funny. I thought capitalism was going to really help everybody. That's how I was it was sold to me, but I kind of want to return it a little bit. There's some flaws in this logic.
Yeah, like and I get like we're in the middle of a pandemic and people are like, yo, I got to make money. And it's just like, yeah, but what kind of money do you want to make? And like, part of what I'm helping people understand is like, if you can literally diversify your client base, you will make more money.
And you will, like, all of us are spending more time on our phones and on the internet, right? Like that's our window to the world.
Right?
And I found myself Googling how to make the perfect pizza crust last night. So there's room for all of us to grow.
Yeah, and I think that that's the piece that places are really catching up on, because you can make some really bonehead moves like pre-pandemic, and people wouldn't find out about it until 3 months later, when you had like fixed it and like actually like it's not a thing anymore. And now it's like you do one thing, and 2 minutes later, like a ton of people are on it, and they're like, "What are you doing?" Because where are we going? Right? Like you're just hanging out. You're on Zoom, you're like on Skype, you're on all of these things, you're on your phone, you're looking at social media. And like I used to like check to see how many hours I was on social media, and now I'm like, I don't care. Like I know I'm on it all the time. Like, don't tell me.
Yeah. Stop being obvious. How do you protect yourself from all of the gunfire and, I mean, the virtual sort of shots, and protect yourself from burnout?
Um, I had to get better at it. I wasn't good about it at first, and I think like so the company's almost 3 years old. And in that,
Congratulations.
I know, eh? And in that first year, though, I was very like, I'll be anywhere, I'll be everywhere, I'll do whatever. And I'm like, I think it was probably a year ago, I was looking back at it and like looking at the amount of travel I was doing. So I was saying yes to anything and everything, predominantly paid because I got rent to pay.
Yes.
And, but it literally was like I was in Denver to do a talk. I came home for 2 days, conceivably to do laundry, took off to Ottawa, came home for another couple of days, took off somewhere else. So it was always like go, 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 go. And it's like, I'm not getting any younger. And like looking at that, I was like, why? Why am I doing that? And so I would get to these points of like having done it, and then I would just crash and I'd be like, I'm gonna be in bed for 3 days because I can't anymore. And like, the main crux of this job, because a lot of people were like, are you going to hire staff? And I'm like, I don't think I can, because what I do that makes this different from like other diversity and inclusion consultants that are out there that are doing fantastic work and working with giant corporations, is that I tell my story, and that's the piece that makes this company a thing. And so I can't be like, yo, go learn my story and pass it on, because it's just not the same thing. So I think the first year it really took me to like realize that I cannot keep up this breakneck pace. And then last year, when COVID first hit, I wasn't sure I had a job anymore, because obviously everyone was like, hey, we're canceling everything.
Yeah.
So
No more
so
conferences.
yeah, right. So the first 2.5 months, I was like, I'm gonna start Googling how to close down my business and wrap it up. And then the George Floyd video came out, and then things just like ramped up to the rafters. But the first thing I said to people was like, you got to give me some time, because I have to be a Black person first, and I have to process what's happened.
Yeah.
And so I took 2 weeks to just process, and like learn about Zoom and learn about like all these other things, because the other piece of my company is traveling to people,
Yes.
and having gatherings, and being together and having these interactive moments, which obviously cannot happen. So I think that it's the long way of saying that I'm finally able to take care of myself because I'm in my safe space.
Yeah.
I'm at home. Like, my cats wander around. I share an office with my wife. Like, and so those are those pieces that keep me grounded. Like, I have anxiety, and people are always like, but you seem so strong. And it's like, yeah, but you got to ramp yourself up for that. Like,
Yes. Yeah.
It's,
Yes.
you can bust in, like wake me up and be like, come do a thing. I'd be like, oh no.
Yeah. I think it was RuPaul who said she like really, really promoted the introverted extrovert idea.
Yes.
And RuPaul, it can be a problematic figure for some, fracking, but I think that I really, I really resonate with this idea of like being stage ready.
Yeah.
You step on the stage and you're like da, 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 and then you go backstage and you're like,
Yeah.
But George Floyd and all of the Black Lives Matter resurgence, or sort of energy that came out of that, was no joke. Like, this is serious, personal. It was, yeah. That's not just traveling too much,
Right.
and defending, for example, your race and the closest thing I can get to is defending my sexuality. which is close to the bone, but it's not as intersectional as defending my gender, my race, my sexuality, all to this barrage of people, and also seeing the silence, like the deafening silence of like, is anybody going to say anything? Is anybody going to stand up?
Yeah, there's that was a big piece that kind of shifted how I did things. Like I was, very, very like, it's okay, like come get used to the idea of it. Like, I'll rub your back. Here's like, a drink. And now I'm like, if you don't say something, it's on like Donkey Kong. Like, let's go. Like, because I realized that being super polite and being super approachable wasn't working anymore. People were just like, yeah, Ren will take care of it.
Right.
And it got to this point where it was like, but I'm just one person. Like I can't take care of it. I can help you find the words and I can help you with the tools and I can get you the resources, but now you have to do something with it.
Yeah.
And so I've, and I don't want to call it call out culture because I think that's ridiculous, but I've just been like, why are you leaving it to all of these people? Like, racialized people have been the ones who have to call and do these like, call to arms and call to action while you're just like, well, maybe I'll retweet it. And it's like, no, man, come on out with me. Like, I'm dirty and I'm beaten and I'm tired. And like, you're just sitting there being like, juice. And it's like, no. Like, come on. So,
yeah.
So it's been a lot of that. And like, I think the company since last year is really turning into this. I'm getting a little feistier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I always associated you with feistiness.
But you've known me for years.
I have known you for years. What changes would you like to see in the beer and alcohol industry?
I'd like to see places taking more of a stance. I think that, there are some breweries right now that are making, great strides to talk about things. And there's Revel Cider, which is in Guelph, and Tarek, who owns it, he's a brown guy, and I think his handle is actually Jolly Brown Guy, or Jolly Brown Man. And he, for every release that they do, they donate $500 to a community group. Cool. And they're tiny. Revel is tiny, and last year I think they donated about $14,000. And it wasn't just about the donations. It was about saying, like highlighting and saying, these are the groups around us that do really fantastic things. And we want you to follow them and we want you to support them. And, I want breweries and stuff to get away from this, like, oh, well, we don't have money, so we can't help. And it's like, okay, but then think of how else you can help, right? It's like when you were young and your friend's house burned down, you weren't like, let me buy you a new house. You were like, oh, let me give you some clothes. Let me bake you a casserole. Like, let me do something. And it's like, I want alcohol industry places to start thinking that way. If I can't give you money, let me bake you a casserole. Let me put out the word that you need something. Let me use my ability to like reach large numbers of people to get that, that attention on you. And it's just like, don't say, well, I don't have money, so I can't help you.
Well, I mean, I know I've been drinking a ton more during this pandemic. Are there any stats saying that the alcohol consumption has increased by percent during the pandemic?
There are stats out there. I don't really look at them because I think that the numbers of what we're drinking versus what's happening behind the scenes are so different. Mm-hmm. A lot of people say, well, breweries must be killing it and they're doing all these things. And it's like, yeah, but unbeknownst to you, they've laid off 75% of their staff because they've been affected by the pandemic. And, especially with beer, the money is in kegs, and kegs are purchased by restaurants. Guess who's not doing that? So then they've had to shift to cans. So you and I can like get a can of whatever.
Yeah.
Your fruited sour.
Yeah.
But like, so on the surface, that brewery is killing it because they're getting all these cans out, but the percentage of sales has changed for them. So yeah, we're all drinking more and like, it's great. But I think that there's, breweries are still having to push really hard. And I mean, the wine industry is such that they can't pivot and switch things, right? Like at most they can a few things, but like canned wine isn't far and wide. I found one that's really good. Stratus, which is in Niagara, has a canned wine that is fantastic, but I don't buy it often because I'd rather buy a bottle. So, and it's like, but wineries can't be like, oh, we're in this crazy time, so we're just gonna make something crazy. Like that's not how wine works. So I think that we yes, it's good to keep drinking, responsibly, or
Ah,
get gift certificates or swag. But I think that, yeah, the numbers, it don't show what's happening behind the scenes.
that's really good information to have because you know, almost all of my purchases recently have been online. And you used to be able to measure how busy a place was. Like you'd walk into a store and you'd be like, oh my, they must be doing well.
Yeah.
And now we don't have that marker. I don't know if 500 other people ordered the same, cable knit toque for 50% off,
Right. Yeah.
or if they made no sales. I have no way of knowing. And so I want to assume that everybody is doing what I'm doing, but
Yep.
you never know. And I think also when you're shopping online, you have an option, right? You can have it mailed to you from Portland, or you can buy something that is down the street and you can pick it up. And there's all these different we have all these postage costs. We've got all this shipping stuff. But I just wanted to ask about wine, because I know with beer, you're saying kegs were like the cash cow for restaurants, or sorry, breweries would make all the money selling kegs to restaurants. But a lot of wineries have exclusivity deals with restaurants and don't sell through normal channels. How are they making it work?
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of it is online ordering, same kind of thing. And it's there's that huge kerfuffle that was happening with the LCBO when we were talking about them doing the skip the dishes thing, and people were like putting it out there like this is how the breakdown is. And so it's like your money as a brewery or a winery or a cidery, like part of it goes to the LCBO for just them existing.
Yeah.
So now it's the question of how many places can I get to? And I know that like there's wineries that you could barely order online from, and now they're like, like organized crime,
What a great name.
which I know it's I've been drinking their stuff probably for like 25 years, and I ordered for the first time last year, like for an online order, because they never used to really do it. Because you're just like, oh, I'll just go down, I'll just like grab a case, whatever, or like go, somewhere, and it's like having to watch them make the change too to try and make some money. Like,
Yeah.
it's crazy to see. You can only adapt so much because of the rules and the legislations.
Yes. Yeah. And the restrictions around alcohol consumption and all of that stuff. And the monopoly that we have in terms of our distribution and all of that stuff. If there was, if so, first of all, assuming that the pandemic ends and we are in a situation where things can go back to the way they were, what would be a version of the way things were that you'd like to see?
Oh wow. I would like to see more highlighting of uh, underrepresented groups in alcohol. So more pop-ups and more collaborations, and bring in food, bring in artistry, bring in makers. Like we're all about makers markets and like all of these things. Like let's do it for real, and let's give platforms to people who don't get to travel around, who are barely making Etsy work for them, and highlighting in different ways. And I really would love to see more of a platform and more spotlights on people who you don't normally see in those industries. So yeah, and I think that it's kind of happening now, and so I would like for it to ramp up a bit.
Continue. I mean, the way you're talking, it sounds pretty holistic. This idea that yes, your title is beer diversity, but you're talking about having a diverse community model where not just voices within the alcohol industry, but diverse voices are being shown any way that works for them.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like a beautiful way going forward that we could all think, like that's not just, I want to, next time I order a beer, I want it to be made by a certain person. I would actually love to know that the beer is part of an engaged community,
Yeah.
and that my going to buy the beer is part of an engaged community, and that my sharing of,
Yeah.
that it goes all the way across.
And I think it needs to, because, we talk about restaurants, and it's like, think of your favorite restaurant and why you go. It's not just because the food's great and the staff is great. It's because of the community that they've created and the community that they're within.
Yes.
Right? Like I think of House on Parliament and I think of like, right? Exactly. Like why do we go there? Like why when we go for dinner, is that the place? And it's like, yeah, the staff is amazing, but you feel welcomed.
Yes.
You're in an area where you know that they have an impact upon.
Yep.
And oh, by the way, the food's great.
Yeah.
Right? Like you don't start with it. You're never like, oh, the food's great, let's go here. You're just like, here are all these other things and you're gonna love it.
Yes.
And I think that's how we have to look at these things, because it's like anyone can make a lasagna, right?
Sure.
And even if it's great, if all of these other pieces don't match up and I don't feel welcomed and I don't feel safe and like this isn't a community piece, then I don't care if the lasagna is the best thing that's ever been made.
Yeah. It's
because I'm not going to go back.
Yeah, it's absolutely the truth. And great shout out to House on Parliament, because I mean, that was the last time we saw each other, was when we had dinner there.
Yes.
And it was so good.
So good.
For all the reasons that you mentioned.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've actually really been thinking in terms of restaurants, they have really been trying to pivot. But, Christmas Eve, I got a takeout dinner from them, and it was like going to see family. And, it was so wonderful. And just seeing how they, exactly as you say, how they've integrated into the community. I mean, a lot of people in the diversity inclusion world talk about how, in a perfect world, I'll be out of a job because they won't need me anymore. Is that kind of your...
That was my first 6 months. I was totally like, I'm going to do this for 6 months and then everything is going to magically be okay. And I'm going to have to go and get a real job. And then the world was like, bitch, hold my beer.
And you're like, wait, what brewery did you get that beer from?
What is that? Yeah, it's I totally was thinking that at first. Now I don't even say it anymore, because I'm like, I don't ever see myself not having a job in this, because and not to make it sound like some Debbie Downer kind of thing, but I've been in beer for 8 years. And in the first few years, there was like a tiny handful of women in sales roles. And now it's like, it's a big thing, but it's still like that much. And now we're talking about BIPOC in sales roles, and it's like this much. And I'm like, it's taken 8 years to get to this point.
Right.
I don't know how much life I have left in me. If I'm really lucky, it's another 40 years. It's going to get to this much. But the growth of breweries is exponential.
Right.
So if we're at this point,
yes,
how many breweries will we have?
Right.
So within my lifetime, I don't ever see myself becoming unemployed when it comes to diversity and inclusion in the alcohol world.
What are some ways that I can support your process, or my viewers can support your process right now?
I think start following people that you don't follow normally on Instagram. I think of Notorious Cree. He is fantastic.
I know. I love him.
I love him.
Yes.
And the great thing is, once you start following a couple people, Instagram's going to be like, oh, here, what about these other people?
Yes.
So start there. Start following people that, for Canadians, there's not like a huge number of people to follow when it comes to some of the diversity stuff for alcohol. But I'm thinking for Americans, there's Black and Soul, which is BLAQ and Soul. Tony and April are fantastic. There's, Dr. J is doing all these things with Crafted by EDU. There's Crown and Hops. There's do you know what I mean? Like, so once you start following a couple, you'll see some more.
Yeah.
And then, but it'll also take you outside of the realm of alcohol. So start there. Yes. Start with some Black people there. Yes. But then your social media suggestions will change, and it'll start being makers. There's, I wish I can remember her name. There's some great videos by a Black woman who does old school roller skating.
Amazing.
And it's Black woman empowerment. Yes. And it's like, she's roller skating, but just like everything about it, and the message and the music she uses, and like all of these, the imagery is so amazing.
Yes.
So I'd say start there.
Start following you would be great.
Follow me if you want.
Beer diversity.
beer_diversity.
Yeah.
And
that's a great spot.
And the thing is, I'm trying to like shine some spotlights, so my stories are always filled with other people.
Yeah.
But I think that's the easiest way to start, but don't just stop there. So that's your start. That's your dipping your toe in the water, and then start finding charities that you can support, and it doesn't have to be monetary supports. So think of how you can help them become bigger and better known. A lot of these charities have a very small following, and if you've got more than 1,000 people, you've probably got more followers than they do. So start highlighting them and start, getting people to understand how they can help, and that's either by donations or volunteering or dropping off things that they need, right? Like, yeah. So I think that those are the initial ways to go, and it'll be hard to do. It never gets really easy. I still struggle with it. But I think that if we all try to do like 3 really small, simple things, that will make such a huge impact and a huge reach.
Yeah. I mean, I love that idea, because I think slacktivism, like I actually do think it makes a difference. I know, and I thank you for highlighting a lot of these accounts that I follow. And what's amazing is like you're looking at something, and maybe it's like, oh, we're releasing a new beer, and then the next post is like about a little bit about the history of anti-Black racism that I didn't know, and I'm like, oh, cool, I didn't realize that street was named after somebody who is really, or that someone was unfairly treated today, or and it's just a little, it just starts to change how we see the world, that things shouldn't be the way they are because they've always been that way, and things are definitely not always as they seem.
Yeah. And it's the other thing is like, ask questions. If a brewery makes a statement, or a winery, or a spirits company makes a statement supporting a group of people, and then they say nothing for 6 months, like, feel free to message them and be like, hey, do you remember that time you did a thing? Where are you at now?
Yeah, I personally, I think, especially with people that I care about, who have opposing or sometimes shocking viewpoints that I don't understand, instead of shutting them down or blocking them, it's like engaging in conversation and saying like, hey, where did this come from? Do you want to talk about it? There are almost every day I have minor little shifts in some of the conversations and little inroads with people, but it does take a lot of energy, and I commend you for having that patience to have those discussions. Even if you say you're more feisty, I know that you are one of the kindest, nicest people. So for me, like, to hear you being feisty is still you being like kitten feisty. Like, you're like, swatting, but still so lovable. Unless you're allergic, in which case.
Yeah. And then it hurts a lot.
It's such a pleasure chatting with you, Renee. I feel like we could go on forever. You were a guest on my Instagram live show, which was also really, really lovely of you. And I just want to thank you for the work and the continued work that you do, not just as a job, but as a lifestyle. And I really hope that we can have dinner at the House on Parliament again. And
I know, right?
And I'd love for it to be in the next, just not long time, because
yeah,
be pretty great.
It would be.
Thank you so much. Is there anything else that you want to throw out to all 7 of my listeners?
Remember to wash your hands for at least 20 seconds.
Okay, and wear a mask too when you're.
And wear a mask.
Yeah. Wear a mask. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you. Bye.
Thank you. I love you. Bye.